Imagine your family had lived on the same land for 30 years. Then one day, armed men show up and tell you to leave or die. In 1841, the Mexican government granted land in northeastern New Mexico to two men. Families settled it, farmed it, and built their lives there for decades. One man, Lucian Maxwell, eventually bought the entire grant. He became one of the wealthiest men in New Mexico. The settlers respected him. He let them stay. But in 1870, Maxwell sold it all to European investors for over $1 million, and he left without a single protection for the families living on that land. The new owners hired gunmen and partnered with the Santa Fe Ring, a corrupt network of lawyers and politicians. Families who had worked that land for decades were called squatters. Then the violence came. The people fought back. In the Colfax County War, settlers, many of them Hispanic, armed themselves to defend their homes. As many as 200 people were killed over 15 years. In 1887, the Supreme Court sided with the company. 1.7 million acres, twice the size of Rhode Island, legally belonged to foreign investors. Today, that land belongs to Ted Turner's ranch and the Boy Scouts. The families are gone, but their fight for home and dignity deserves to be remembered. Follow Mexican American Story for more untold history.
The Colfax County War erupted in northern New Mexico after the vast Maxwell land grant, originally given by the Mexican government, was sold to wealthy investors in the 1870s. These investors, backed by hired gunmen and corrupt officials, sought to push out settlers, small ranchers, and miners who had lived and worked the land for years. The settlers refused to go quietly. What followed was a brutal land war marked by ambushes, lynchings, gun battles, and vigilante justice. Lawmen often stood with the land company or were too afraid to act. Towns like Cimarron became battlegrounds. As violence escalated, the federal government sent in troops to keep order. But peace came at a cost. Hundreds were killed or displaced. The land grant company kept its hold, proving that in the Old West, money and power often trumped justice. The Colfax County War stands as a stark reminder of the bloody struggles between corporate greed and common people, and how the American frontier wasn't won by law, but by who dared to fight for it.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to open up by giving all the praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rechakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who were well and preached the truth and sincerity. Shalom to the hopeful elect. And this is the brother Amawan Ayash from the GMS Indianapolis camp coming back at you with another quick lesson through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai. And today's lesson is going to be another installment for our camp series here in the GMS Indianapolis camp, entitled For Thy Violence Against Thy Brother Jacob, which of course is quoted from the book of Obadiah, chapter 1 and verse 10. And what we do is dig up articles and stories, going into the atrocities and evils and wickedness that Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, has committed, all right, against the Lord's chosen people. All right, the Lord's chosen people being the Israelites, all right, which today we would know as the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. All right, and in today's lesson, or today's installment of For Thy Violence Against Thy Brother Jacob, I have this article dealing with the Colfax County War, and I will put a short video clip, explaining what's going on in this Colfax County War, all right, preceding this lesson, Lord willing. But pretty much this is, Esau Edom, all right, being Esau Edom, exacting violence against the northern kingdom, primarily Issachar, using violence to take over lands and things of that nature. So, hey, man, there is no new thing under the sun, man. You see, and Esau has always done this. All right, he did that with America, the country of America, took down our northern kingdom brothers, the Gadites, right, with the Gatling guns, smallpox blankets, right, so on and so forth, an endless slaughter upon our people. You see, so ultimately, the list of Esau's crimes against the children of Israel goes on and on and on. So what we're going to do first is read this brief synopsis right here, and then we'll get the opening scripture. It says here, the Colfax County War was a range war that occurred from 1873 to 1888 between settlers and the new owners of the Maxwell land grant in Colfax County in the U.S. state of New Mexico. The war started when the new owners tried to remove the local settlers from the land they had just bought. Right, Esau trying to move Issachar out the land that they own. And see what the scripture goes into this, right? Talking about what thou shalt not remove thy neighbor's landmark, right? Which will get that Lord's will. You see? Hey, we know according to Psalms 50 that what Esau, Edom, and so-called white man hates instruction. You see, as a matter of fact, let's go ahead and get that. All right. In the book of Psalms, the 50th chapter. And we'll just read verse 16. Nah, we got to read all the way through. Psalm chapter 50, verse 16. It says, but unto thee wicked, the Heavenly Father saith, which we know the nation known as the wicked throughout the scriptures, right, as Esau, Edom, and so-called white men. All right, Malachi 1 and 4, right, Edom is known as the border of wickedness, right, wherever Esau, Edom, and so-called white man goes, wickedness follows, right, we know what, that the earth is given into the hand of the wicked, right, who's in rulership right now? Esau, Edom, and so-called white men. You see, and with the wicked in rulership, nothing but wickedness is being forwarded in the planet Earth. All right, but it goes on to read, what hast thou to do to declare my statutes, or that thou shouldest take my covenant in thy mouth? Seeing thou hatest instruction, and castest my words behind thee. You see, so ultimately Esau, Edom, so-called white man, hates the instruction of the scriptures. And within the instruction of the scriptures, all right, it tells us that what we are not supposed to remove our neighbor's landmark. You see, and Esau, Edom, so-called white man goes completely against that. And you didn't do that just against any nation, man. You've done it against the Lord's chosen people. You see, so with that comes a heavy recompense, right? Because hey, there was a lot of bloodshed in this Colfax County war, right? The Heavenly Father said, "What he that toucheth you, touches the apple of mine eye." You see, so you ain't touched no any old Joe Smo, Billy Joe, right? Nation of people, man. You touched the Most High's prized possession, and you got to pay for that shit, man. It says, when thou sawest a thief, then thou consentest with him, and has been partaker with adulterers. Thou givest thy mouth to evil, and thy tongue frameth deceit. You see, so Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, he's the number one advocate for wickedness. All right, being that what? He is the wicked. You see? It says, verse 20, thou sittest and speakest against thy brother, thou slanderest thine own mother's son. Esau, Edom, so-called white man, does nothing but persecute and slander the chosen children of Israel all the day long, man. You know? So that's the point, man. We see Esau hates instruction, which is why when you observe how the devil moves, how Esau, Edom, so-called white man moves, everything he does is completely contrary to the scriptures, man. It says the war started when the new landowners tried to remove the local settlers, from the land they had just bought. The locals refused to leave as they had settled much of their livelihood in the grant, which resulted in conflict and violence in 1875. It has been estimated that as many as 200 people were killed in the conflict. So let's go ahead and get the scripture that we were initially supposed to open up with. The book of Obadiah 1 and verse 10. It says, for thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. So ultimately the judgment that's going to fall upon Esau, Edom, and so-called white man for all the evils, right, the wickedness, the atrocities he's committed against the children of Israel, from Judah all the way on down to Issachar, are his judgments that way he's going to be cut off forever. Which when you read later in this chapter, we know that what the tribes of Israel are going to come together and completely eradicate the nation of Edom. Right? And there should be none remaining of the house of Esau, for the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushua has spoken it. Right? So what we're getting ready to go into, this is just many of the crimes, right, that's on the list, right, that Esau has committed. Right? And this is just, and what we've covered so far in this camp series, that's just what we know. All right, the scriptures talk about how the sins of this devil have reached the heavens. So as we always say, man, we're only barely scratching the surface of everything that this devil has truly done unto us, man. Okay, let's go to the book of Ezekiel, chapter 35. And verses 5 and 6, and then we'll jump down. It says, Ezekiel chapter 35 and verse 5, it says, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity and the time that their iniquity had an end. Who was the Lord talking to in this chapter, right? The Edomites. All right, Mount Seir. When you go up to verse 1, right? Moreover, the word of the Lord, Yahweh Bashmi Yahushai, came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir and prophesy against it. And we know, according to Genesis 36 and 8, it tells us that what? Esau dwelt in Mount Seir. All right, Esau is Edom. You see, so Mount Seir is interchangeable with Esau, Edom. So the Lord is prophesying, or is telling Ezekiel to prophesy against this devil, right? Which, hey, we come in that stead today. All right, as the Lord has raised us up as watchmen to the house of Israel, right? The Lord has given us a spirit of prophecy. Okay, we have the testimony of Yahweh Shai, which is the spirit of prophecy. So now we come in that same stead, prophesying against Mount Seir, right? Back in verse 6, it says, Therefore, as I live, said the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. You see, so this devil Esau was drunken off the blood, off the blood of the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, man, the Israelites. All right, it talks about that in Revelation. The great whore who was drunken off the blood of the saints, roughly paraphrasing. You see, so a lot of blood, right, of the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, right, the Lord's chosen people, the Israelites, right, has been shed in this land. You see, and we know, according to Numbers 35 and 33, that there's only one way that this land can be cleansed, right? Numbers chapter 35 and verse 33. So ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by what? But by the blood of him that shed it. So in order for this land to be cleansed, right, Esau, Edom's blood has to be shed. You see, and ultimately what's going to happen is the Lord is going to destroy the whole of America for what this place has done unto his, for what this place has done unto his chosen people. You see? So let's jump back to Ezekiel, the 35th chapter, and I wanted to get a point real quick. Verse 10, it says, because thou hast said, these two nations and these two countries shall be mine, and we will possess it, whereas the Lord was there, which ultimately two nations going to what? You know, southern and northern kingdom. We know that Esau was given the power, right, to be able to subdue the Lord's chosen people, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, right? And what it says, and these two countries shall be mine. These two countries being what? The land of Israel and the land of America. Because what? All right, the land of Israel, it belongs to us. All right, well, we know according to prophecy, which is in the next chapter over, right, Ezekiel, the 36th chapter, that ultimately Idumea, right, which is the Greek way of saying Edom, right, Idumea and the residue of the heathen, right, will have possession of our land. You see, and over here in America, we know that before the European settlers came over here and invaded this land, who inhabited this land first, man? Our northern kingdom brothers, man. You know, Gad, Reuben, all right, so on and so forth. See, but we know that through prophecy, right, Esau, Edom, and so-called white man was able to come over and take over these lands through the force of the sword. You see? And what? New Mexico is indeed a part of America. So I just wanted to bring that point out because, you know, Esau, through prophecy, right, he was able to take over the land of America, right, through the force of the sword. You see, and this is what we're reading about right now. All right, this goes into that, man. This is going into that, you know? So, let's go ahead and read into the article. We'll read the background. I already have that open, and the war. And, I pray to Yahweh Bashim Yahushai that this is indeed edifying and informative to the elect body of the nation of Israel. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. It says, the disputed territory began as a land grant from the Mexican provincial governor of Santa Fe de Nuevo Mexico to Charles H. Bobian and Guadalupe Miranda in 1841, which included large portions of what is now Colfax County in northern New Mexico and Las Animas County in southern Colorado. In 1849, after the region was ceded to the United States at the end of the Mexican-American War, an American pioneer named Lucien B. Maxwell moved to the area and married Bobian's daughter, and became a part owner and manager of the vast land grant. Over the following decades, many more pioneer families arrived in the area, which was conveniently situated along the branches of the Santa Fe Trail. It says Maxwell was very lenient to visiting settlers, allowing pioneers to settle and ranch on land within the grant, letting Ute and Jicarilla, if I said that right, Jicarilla Indians to hunt game in the area and even leasing claims on minerals to miners. In 1870, Maxwell sold the grant to a group of English financiers for a reported price of $1.35 million. The new owners formed the Maxwell Land Grant and Railway Company. Their arrival and purchase of the land immediately spurred controversy among the people already living in the area. And animosity quickly developed between the two sides. Property developers working for the company complained that miners and farmers who believed were squatters were disturbing and even harassing their work, presenting various obstacles to the company's production. Let's see what that word squatters goes into. It says squatting is the action of occupying an abandoned or unoccupied area of land or a building, usually residential, that the squatter does not own, rent, or otherwise have lawful permission to use. Let's see. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they referred to the inhabitants already living there as squatters, which what? It says squatting is the action of occupying an unabandoned or unoccupied area or of land or building, usually residential, that the squatter does not own, rent, or otherwise have lawful permission to use. You see, so in Esau's mind, right, our people, right, Issachar, they didn't have lawful possession of that land. That's in Esau's mind. See, so he comes up with these things in his mind to justify, right, the theft and the evil and the wickedness that he's getting ready to commit towards our people, man. You see, let's read that again. It says, their arrival and purchase of the land immediately spurred controversy among the people already living in the area, and animosity quickly developed between the two sides. Property developers working for the company complained that miners and farmers who they believed were squatters were disturbing and even harassing their work, presenting various obstacles to the company's production. Many of these settlers were white, or Edomites, Spanish, and Native American people who believed that the land was in the public domain or felt that they had been given Maxwell's unwritten permission to live on the grant. You see, so what? It says many of these settlers were white, which you know are Edomites, right? Spanish, you know, which goes back to what? The Spaniards, right? Being Edomites, right? It says what? And Native American people, which, hey, it's not far-fetched that you had some of our people, you know, joining hand in hand with the wicked, right? To come down on our own people, man. All right, we know in the time of Maccabees that there were many wicked men, right, in Israel that sought to make a covenant with the heathen. You see, so you have that, you know, throughout history, man. All right, the wicked of our people seeking to make a covenant with the heathen. All right, but reading on, it says, in order to dislodge the settlers, gunmen were hired in large numbers that outmanned and outgunned the former. A large meeting between the settlers occurred on March 30th, 1873, in which they agreed to arm themselves to protect their homes and property if necessary. It says Reverend Franklin J. Tobey, a staunch ally of the settlers and squatters opposing the Maxwell Land Grant Company, was found murdered in Cimarron Canyon on September 14, 1875. It was quickly assumed that someone from the company was responsible, and the blame was pinned on a gunman named Cruz Vega. Vega and his family were originally sided with the Hispanic settlers in the area, and his uncle, Francisco Griego, was one of the leaders among the Hispanic people during the conflict. Real quick, let me go back up. And Salakia, bear with me 1 second. Kind of reading back through what we already read a little bit. And just to make sure all the facts and statements are correct. Okay. All right, so reading on, it says, however, they soon shifted sides when Griego and his family were faced with charges of killing 3 cavalrymen in an altercation in a card game, and also implicated in a suspected murder of another soldier on June. You see, and we know that what Esau, he does certain shit, right, to justify, all right, him coming against our people. You see, so what? One of his own could have killed one of his own, man. All right, we know how Esau get down. Right, one of his people was guilty of the crime, and then the blame is placed on Jake. You see, so Esau does a lot of shit to fulfill his agenda, which his agenda in the story that we're reading, what he wanted that land in New Mexico. All right, so let's get this real quick in John chapter 10, verse 10. It says, the thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. You see, and when you look throughout Esau's history and how he got America, all right, he's done nothing but that. Steal, kill, and destroy. All right. Shed endless blood of our people. Right. Coveted and stole this land, right, from our Northern Kingdom brothers. All right. Raped our women. You know. All kinds of wickedness, man. It says, I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. And Yahweh Shai is getting ready to bring that everlasting or abundant life to his elect, right? The nation of Israel, beginning with the elect. You see, but hey, we know what, as the scripture just said, the thief cometh not before to kill and before to steal and to kill and to destroy. You see, and that's all Esau does. And once again, as we stated earlier, right, you didn't do that to just any old body, man. You done it to the Lord's chosen people. So there has to be a reckoning for that. Okay. Let's go to the book of Micah. Chapter 2. Starting at verse 1. It says, woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand. And as we quoted earlier, what the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. So with the earth being given into the hand of the wicked, right, Esau, Edom, so-called white man, has all jurisdiction, has all the power, right, to exercise wickedness to his heart's content. All right, but the Lord said, woe to them that do this, man. So, soon to be, man, our death and destruction is coming for you devils, man. You Edomites, man. All right, beginning with the top wicked elite of Edom. All right, beginning with you Amalekites, man. All right, you Ish people. Right? Verse 2. And they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away. And this is what we're reading about, man. You know how many individuals died due to Esau coveting this land? I said when we read up in the beginning, right? It said what? It has been estimated that as many as 200 people were killed in the conflict. You see? And this is a war, right, that ranged about 15 years, man. From 1873 to 1888, man. You see? So, hey, man, this devil, right, has been guilty of killing, right, our Northern Kingdom brothers, right, Issachar over there, just so he could have possession of that land. You see? It says, so they oppress a man in his house, even a man and his heritage. You see? Let's go ahead and get it. Let's get this real quick. Deuteronomy 19 and 14, it says, thou shalt not remove thy neighbor's landmark, which of old time they have set in thine inheritance, which thou shalt inherit in the land that the Lord Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai thy God giveth thee to possess it. Proverbs 22 and 8, remove not the ancient landmark which thy fathers have set. You see? Proverbs 23 and 10, remove not the old landmark and enter not into the fields of the fatherless. You see, we know what that the fatherless, right, is a metaphor for Jake throughout the scriptures, right? And that's exactly what Esau, Edom, a so-called white man, has done. Right? He coveted fields and taken them by violence, right? Fields and lands that were inhabited by our people. Right? He came down with the force of the sword and took them by violence. You see, so Esau has to pay for all of that, man. You know? But reading on, excuse me. It says, however, they soon shifted sides when Griego and his family were faced with charges of killing 3 cavalrymen in an altercation in the card game, and also implicated in a suspected murder of another soldier on June 1st. They were said to have been blackmailed in exchange for dropping the charges the family would have faced. A notorious gunfighter by the name of Clay Allison threw his hat with the settlers. In 1874, while having dinner, Allison shot and killed assassin Chunk Colbert. Later that year, Allison formed a mob who apprehended Cruz Vega before torturing him and hanging him by a pole. You see, so ultimately, even our Northern Kingdom brothers, right, were hung, lynched. You see, when it comes to the topic of lynching, we mainly, Southern Kingdom is mainly known for that, but it even happened amongst our Northern Kingdom brothers. You see, it says the Vega family mourned Cruz's death, and his uncle Francisco swore to avenge him by killing Allison. On November 1st, Griego managed to trap and confront Allison in the saloon of the St. James Hotel. As Griego drew his pistol, Allison drew faster and shot Griego twice in the chest, killing him. Days later, Allison was charged with the murder, but after an inquiry, the charge was dropped and the shooting was ruled as self-defense. Company gang members retaliated by conducting nighttime raids on the settlers, destroying their property, as well as murdering those who fought back. You see, this is because of the presence of a large lawless element at Cimarron and the inability of local authorities to keep the peace. The Attorney General of the New Mexico Territory, under directions from Governor Marsh Giddings, requested federal troops from Fort Union to help Sheriff Isaiah Reinhardt restore order at Cimarron. No troops were sent at the time, but troubles continued at Cimarron that eventually required military intervention. The Maxwell Land Grant and Railway Company was also allied with the powerful Santa Fe Ring, a group of influential lawyers and politicians who controlled many western states. You see, so the government, and that's what we see, man. Slakia. Whenever there's a conflict, involving Jake, Esau versus Jake, man. All right, Esau always has the government on their side, man. We always mention the movie Birth of a Nation, which came out, I believe that was 2016, dealing with the story of Nat Turner, right? When Nat Turner had led that rebellion, right, against the slave owners, right, and was trying to get to freedom, we seen that the government, right, involved in helping bring to naught, right, their plans of achieving any freedom. You see, the settlers did not like the incursion of the soldiers on this land, and this caused a great deal of violence between the factions. Buffalo soldiers of the 9th U.S. Cavalry were among the units sent, and on one occasion, some of them had a shootout with a group of Texas cowboys in the St. James Hotel. 3 soldiers died during the shootout, and a few months later, one of the cowboys, Davy Crockett, was killed by the local sheriffs. It says Clay Allison himself shot and killed a black sergeant in a bar where he was drinking. So, you got Southern Kingdom in there that got involved in this, man. A man named Cardenas eventually confessed to the murder of Toby, and he was subsequently hanged by a group of 20 gunmen on November 10th. Soon, the conflict started to dwindle down between the leaders of each party. Clay Allison was arrested in late 1876 by a posse consisting of a sheriff, a captain, and a lieutenant with 45 U.S. cavalrymen. He later left the county in December of that year. The English owners of the Maxwell Land Grant Company foreclosed on the land by 1879, and the company was purchased by new owners from the Netherlands. Finally, in 1885, the lawn of the Colfax County Courthouse was the site of one of the last gun battles of the Colfax County War. A group led by George Curry was assaulted by a group of the sheriff's deputies on the courthouse lawn. Curry's brother and one of his followers were killed in the gun battle. Curry pleaded guilty to unlawfully carrying firearms and was fined $5. The Dutch owners also faced financial instability and were sued by the United States government in the early 1880s for making claims on land with the public domain in Colorado. On March 8, 1887, the company finally sent its plea to the United States Supreme Court. In his ruling 5 weeks later, the court confirmed the company's ownership of the land. When it concluded, we are entirely satisfied that the grant, as confirmed by the action of Congress, is a valid grant, that the survey and the patent issued upon it are entirely free and from any fraud. So Esau just straight up went in there and took the land from Issachar, man. You know? This how the devil move, man. You know? He sees something that he like, you see, and he determines that he has to have it. And if the current inhabitants don't want to give it over, then he's just gonna come down with the force of the sword, man. You see? It says some of the settlers left the land, but many managed to settle with the company. The conflict calmed down between some of the settlers who were allowed to remain and the landowners who won over the property. However, some were still being evicted as late as 1894. The last victim of the war, Richard Russell, was killed in a shootout with company enforcers near his ranch in Stonewall, Colorado in 1888. You see, and that also marks the end of the article here in Wikipedia. Let's go ahead and open up YouTube. All right, because I do have that clip in my history.
Imagine your family had lived on the same land for 30 years. Then one day, armed men show up and tell you to leave or die. In 1841, the Mexican government granted land in northeastern New Mexico to two men. Families settled it, farmed it, and built their lives there for decades. One man, Lucian Maxwell, eventually bought the entire grant. He became one of the wealthiest men in New Mexico. The settlers respected him. He let them stay. But in 1870, Maxwell sold it all to European investors for over $1 million. And he left without a single protection for the families living on that land. The new owners hired gunmen and partnered with the Santa Fe Ring, a corrupt network of lawyers and politicians. Families who had worked that land for decades were called squatters. Then the violence came. The people fought back, lawyers and politicians. Families who had worked that land for decades were called squatters.
So our people who was already there, right, were called squatters, like we were going into earlier. And we read the definition of squatting. It says squatting is the action of occupying an abandoned or unoccupied area of land or a building, usually residential, that the squatter does not own, rent, or otherwise have lawful permission to use. You see, so these fucking devils going up in that land, right, taking it from our people, they're the real squatters. You see how these fucking crackers move, man? You know, the fucking nerve of these devils. But you see that that's why out of all nations, man, this fucking cracker ain't gonna receive no mercy, man, from the Lord Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. You see, and the beautiful part about it is, all right, is this, man, in the book of Ezekiel, the 25th chapter, man. Now I'll jump straight to the point in verse 14. It says, "And I will lay vengeance upon Edom, you so-called white people, you fucking crackers, man, by the hand of my people Israel, all 12 tribes, Judah all the way on down to Issachar. And they shall do in Edom according to mine anger and according to my fury, and they shall know my vengeance, saith the Lord Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai." You see, so ultimately the Lord, he's going to put his anger within us to exact vengeance upon Esau, Edom, and so-called white men. And the thing is, as I stated earlier, right, within the series, man, we've barely scratched the surface, man. All right, the list of Esau's crimes against the children of Israel goes on and on and on. So this is what we've only covered so far. But the Lord, he's going to put everything in our remembrance of what this fucking devil's done unto us, man. And man, you fucking crackers are in for it, man. All right, you fucking crackers are in for the most divine ass whooping known to man.
Then the
So
violence
let's
came.
rewind that back, man.
In dollars.
Because these devils got some goddamn nerve, man.
Left without a single protection for the families living on that land. The new owners hired gunmen and partnered with the Santa Fe Ring, a corrupt network of lawyers and politicians. Families who had worked that land for decades were called squatters. Then the violence came. The people fought back. In the Colfax County War, settlers, many of them Hispanic, armed themselves to defend their homes. As many as 200 people were killed over 15 years. In 1887, the Supreme Court sided with the company. 1.7 million acres, twice the size of Rhode Island, legally belonged to foreign investors. Today, that land belongs to Ted Turner's ranch and the Boy Scouts. The families are gone, but their fight for home and dignity deserves to be remembered. Follow Mexican American Story for more untold history. Imagine your family.
So there you have it, man. So this is the clip I'm going to go ahead and put in the beginning of this lesson, preceding us going into the article. But, hey, man, as we see, man, there's no new thing under the sun, man. Esau does the same shit over and over and over again, you know? And this devil ain't going to change, you see? So the only solution to all this is that the Lord Yahweh Bashmi outside takes this devil out, man. You know? So let's go ahead and get this in the book of Amos, chapter 1, and verse 11. It says, "Thus said the Lord Yahweh Bashmi Yahushai, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity. And his anger did tear perpetually, and he kept his wrath forever." So the judgment that the Lord Yahweh Bashmi Yahushai purposes to bring upon this devil, Esau, Edom, so-called white man, all right, the Lord's not going to turn it away. You see, for all the evil that you've committed against the Lord's chosen people, the mass bloodshed, rape, robbery, pillaging, guess what, man? Your judgment is inevitable, man, and it will come to pass. Ain't no escaping it. You see? And I'll leave you with this in the book of Obadiah, chapter 1, verse 18. "And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble. And they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau," you so-called white people. Right? For the Lord Yahweh Bashmi Yahushai has spoken it. So in the days to come, all right, due to the violence that Esau has committed against the children of Israel, all right, what's going to happen is they're going to serve their servitude under the Israelites for 1,000 years. And after their 1,000 years, right, they're going to be burned and done away with forever. And there should be none remaining of the house of Esau, for the Lord Yahweh Bashmi Yahushai has spoken it. You see? So I'm going to go ahead and close out right there. I pray to Yahweh Bashmi Yahushai that this lesson was indeed edifying, informative, and, to the elect body of the nation of Israel. And without further ado, I'd like to close out by giving all the praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Chakudash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well and preach the truth and sincerity. Shalom to the hopeful elect. And Lord's will I see in the next lesson. Till then, I say shalom.